AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with me temporarily, and now being blamed for ruining their plans. I, 28F, live in a small 2-bedroom apartment in a city I moved to for work a couple of years ago. I'm single, career-focused, and I like having my personal space. I'm pretty independent and proud of managing on my own. My sister, 32F, has always been a bit more dramatic and has a history of leaning on family when things get tough. She's been dating her fiancé, 33M, for about 3 years now, and while I like him okay, I don't know him as well as my sister does. About a month ago, my sister called me saying that they had a minor housing emergency because the apartment they were renting unexpectedly had some serious water damage. They were told it would take at least 3 weeks to repair. My sister asked if her fiancé could stay at my apartment for a few weeks while they sorted everything out. I said that, unfortunately, it wasn't really feasible. My place is small, I work from home most days, and I don't have a spare bedroom. The living room is my main relaxation and workspace. I told her that I couldn't comfortably host anyone, even temporarily, without it being incredibly disruptive to my life. She immediately got defensive and said it wouldn't be that big of a deal, and that it would really help them avoid the expense of hotels and other short-term arrangements. I suggested a compromise. Maybe I could help them find a short-term rental, or I could contribute financially toward a hotel if that would help them. She said no. She wanted a personal space for him, and she seemed upset that I was not accommodating them. I told her I was sorry, but I wasn't going to compromise my own living situation, and I suggested she consider Airbnb or another temporary solution. Things got tense after that. She started sending me long messages about how family is supposed to help each other, how I always put work and comfort over family, and how I was being selfish. I tried explaining that while I understood their situation, having someone live in my tiny apartment for 3 weeks would be really stressful for me. I also mentioned that I work odd hours and need quiet, which wouldn't be possible if her fiancé was there. I offered to help them research hotels and temporary apartments, but she seemed to ignore this. A few days later, she sent a message saying that because I refused to let him stay, they would have to pay for a more expensive place than they were hoping, and it was all my fault. She also added that I was being unsupportive of their future marriage by not helping with this. At this point, I started feeling frustrated and a bit hurt because I do try to help when I can, but I also have to set boundaries for my own well-being. I responded politely but firmly, reiterating that I couldn't host him and that it wasn't reasonable to expect me to compromise my work and living space for 3 weeks. Things escalated after that. My sister called me crying one night, saying she felt betrayed by me, and she accused me of putting my apartment above our family bond. She even brought up past instances where I didn't help her with small favors and used them as evidence of my selfishness. I tried to stay calm and reminded her that I do help when I can, but some things just aren't feasible. She ended the call abruptly, saying she needed to reconsider who she can trust in her life. After a week of tense silence, I found out from a mutual friend that my sister has been telling people I refuse to help them in a crisis and don't care about family. I also overheard her fiancé commenting to another friend that my future wife's sister is impossible to deal with and won't even let me stay in a tiny apartment for a few weeks. I felt blindsided and hurt because I was being painted as the villain when I had genuinely offered alternatives and tried to maintain a polite boundary. A few days ago, my sister texted me a long message asking me to rethink my decision for the sake of family, and hinted that our relationship would be strained if I didn't reconsider. I haven't responded yet because I don't know how to say, I care about you, but I still can't let him stay here without her seeing it as a personal attack. I've considered offering to help financially again, but part of me feels like this is exactly what she wants, for me to sacrifice my space and comfort. And I worry that giving him would set a precedent where she feels she can push me into things I'm not comfortable with. I've talked to a couple of close friends, and they say I'm not wrong because my apartment is small, I work from home, and hosting someone for weeks will be incredibly disruptive. Others have told me that I'm being unnecessarily rigid, and that family means occasionally putting aside comfort for each other. I don't feel like I'm refusing to help outright. I offered financial assistance, helped research options, and suggested temporary solutions, but they argue that none of that counts if I don't host. Now I'm at a loss. I feel guilty for not giving in, but also frustrated that I'm being portrayed as the villain when I have reasonable boundaries. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my apartment temporarily, even though I offered alternative forms of help. I should add that my apartment literally has one bedroom, a small living room that doubles as my office, and one bathroom. There is no extra couch that converts into a real bed comfortably, and I work irregular hours that require concentration. My sister has known my living situation for years, yet she seemed to expect me to make it work regardless of how unrealistic it is. Additionally, I live in a high-cost city where hotels and short-term rentals are pricey, but I also make a good salary and offered to cover part of that expense. The issue isn't financial for them. It's about convenience and personal comfort. Some of our mutual friends have suggested that I might try to compromise more and just let him stay, but the thought of having someone else in my apartment for multiple weeks, using my bathroom, eating my food, and being in my personal space feels extremely stressful. I also have health issues that sometimes require rest during the day, which could be disrupted if he is there. It's reached a point where I feel like any response I give will be twisted into "I don't care about family," which is unfair. I want to maintain a relationship with my sister, but I also want to protect my own mental health and personal space. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with me temporarily, even though I offered other ways to help. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after discovering a family secret that changed everything. This has been eating at me for months, and I'm still unsure if I'm in the wrong. My name is Jessica. I'm 28, and my sister, Lauren, is 32. Growing up, Lauren and I were close, though we had our usual sibling rivalry. Our parents divorced when I was 14, and Lauren stayed mostly with our mom while I bounced between both parents' homes. Despite the split, we always try to be there for each other, so when Lauren got engaged last year, I was genuinely happy for her. Her fiancé, Mark, seemed like a great guy on the surface, charming, successful, polite. I even started helping her with wedding planning, choosing dresses, and organizing invitations. Fast forward a few months into the engagement, Lauren invited me over for a family talk. I expected it to be about wedding plans, but as soon as I walked in, the atmosphere was tense. Mom and Dad were both there, looking unusually serious. Lauren hesitated before speaking, and finally, she said, "Jessica, I think it's time you knew something about Mark." I felt my stomach drop. What could she possibly be hiding? It turns out, Mark is actually my half-brother. Here's the context. When I was around 12, my father had a brief relationship with a woman named Anne, who was a colleague. I knew about the relationship, but never knew any details beyond that it was short-lived and moved out of state afterward. Apparently, Mark is Anne's son, making him my half-brother. Lauren found out because Mark's birth records were mixed up when she was helping him with paperwork for a loan. She stumbled upon his mother's previous marriage records and immediately pieced it together. When she told me, I was stunned. I didn't know whether to laugh nervously, cry, or scream. The idea that my sister was marrying my half-brother felt surreal, like a nightmare written in the wrong genre. I couldn't even process it at first. Lauren said she hadn't known either, though she claimed she noticed some resemblance between Mark and me early on, but never thought much of it. After the initial shock, I confronted Mark privately. He was polite but awkward and admitted he didn't know either. He said he loved Lauren and didn't want to hurt anyone, but that he was also horrified by the revelation. We both agreed that the wedding should probably not happen, at least not until everyone involved fully processed the situation. I told Lauren I couldn't attend if the wedding went forward, and I insisted she speak with our parents and Mark. I was firm because, frankly, I felt nauseated thinking about her marrying my half-brother. It's not just a moral thing. It's also about family dynamics, social perception, and the shock to our extended family. Lauren reacted poorly. She accused me of overreacting and said that legally, nothing prevents her from marrying him, and it's not like he's my blood relative in the way that counts. I argued that this wasn't about legality. It was about ethics, family, and emotional fallout. She claimed I was trying to ruin her happiness and that I was being dramatic. Our parents were also divided. Dad told me that while my concerns were valid, Lauren and Mark were adults and could make their own decisions. Mom, however, sided with me, saying that she could see the situation clearly and that marrying a half-sibling would be emotionally devastating for the entire family. I tried reasoning with Lauren, suggesting she postpone the wedding to allow everyone to process, seek counseling, or even reconsider the relationship entirely. She refused and started messaging me with increasingly hurtful comments, calling me controlling and judgmental. When I remained firm about not attending, she sent a group chat message to the entire extended family, portraying me as the villain who was jealous and petty about her happiness. Some relatives sided with her, some with me, and some stayed out of it entirely. The tension exploded at family dinners. Cousins whispered, aunts avoided eye contact, and even casual events felt unbearable. My friends told me I needed to step back and let Lauren live her life, but I kept thinking about the awkwardness of having a wedding where the bride and groom were half-siblings and what it would do to everyone involved, including potential future children. Things escalated when Lauren decided to have a bachelor/bachelorette party. She invited everyone except me. Mark said he understood my absence, but still seemed torn about the situation. Social media blew up too. Lauren started posting engagement pictures with captions like, "Nothing will ever come between us," which felt like salt in the wound. I debated responding or posting my side, but I knew that would just make things worse. Now, months later, the wedding is scheduled. I've stayed out of all planning discussions, declined invitations to pre-wedding events, and told her clearly I won't be attending. Family members keep asking me if I'll change my mind, but I can't. Part of me feels guilty because I know this is devastating for Lauren, and part of me feels like if I attend, I'd be complicit in something that feels fundamentally wrong. I've tried therapy to process this, and while my therapist validates my feelings, she also mentioned that people might see my stance as rigid or judgmental. I'm stuck in a limbo of anger, sadness, and frustration. My friends say I shouldn't be responsible for Lauren's decisions, and they have a point. But family bonds feel like obligations sometimes, and the thought of sitting through a wedding with this knowledge feels unbearable. I've also tried to empathize with Lauren. She genuinely believes love can overcome biology, and I can understand that perspective, yet I cannot reconcile it with my sense of family ethics and emotional comfort. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding knowing that her fiancé is actually my half-brother. I keep replaying the events, trying to see if I'm being too harsh or rigid. I know it's a legal gray area, but morally and emotionally, it feels wrong to me. I've tried talking, reasoning, and stepping back, but nothing seems to change her mind, and I can't compromise my own mental health by being there. Yet I wonder if, by refusing to attend, I am escalating the situation and causing more pain than necessary. I just don't know where the line is between protecting myself and being a good sister. Has anyone been in a similar situation? How do you navigate family love, ethics, and personal boundaries when they clash so intensely? Opie, always trying so hard to be funny. And remember when she thought she was athletic? Bless her heart. People were laughing awkwardly, and I felt my face turn red. I tried to brush it off, thinking she was just teasing, but she continued to humiliate me by recounting embarrassing childhood stories, all framed as funny memories, but clearly aimed at making me the joke. After the shower, I was in tears. I told him I felt hurt, and she brushed it off, saying, "I was just joking. You know, everyone laughs with you, not at you." But it didn't feel like a joke. It felt cruel, calculated, and unnecessary. I mentioned to our parents that I was hurt, and they were sympathetic, but basically said, "Em is just playful. Don't take it too seriously." I tried to put it behind me, but things only got worse. During the final stages of wedding planning, Emma kept making subtle digs at me, commenting on my dress, my hair, and even the way I helped with the seating chart. One instance in particular stood out. She criticized my choice of shoes for the rehearsal dinner in front of Mark and his family, saying, "Oh, I didn't realize we were going for the casual, sad aunt vibe tonight." That night, I ended up in the bathroom crying, trying to hold it together, and later texted her that her comments were hurtful. She replied that I was overreacting and needed thicker skin. The breaking point came during the rehearsal dinner itself. Emma and Mark were hosting at a fancy restaurant, and she had invited both our immediate and extended families. During the toasts, Emma stood up, glass in hand, and began telling a story about how she always had to pick up the slack because of me. She made it sound like I was lazy, irresponsible, and constantly trying to copy her. The whole table laughed. I wanted to disappear. I got up and left before she even finished, and I drove home in tears. After that night, I told Emma I couldn't be part of the wedding. I explained that the public humiliation over the past few months, especially the shower and rehearsal dinner, had made me feel like she didn't respect me or care about my feelings. I said that attending would only be painful and might even embarrass me further. She exploded. She called me selfish, dramatic, and accused me of trying to ruin her special day. She told my parents and Mark that I was being petty and vindictive. My parents were disappointed, but tried to remain neutral, saying they wished I could just get over it for her happiness. I haven't spoken to Emma in weeks. She's been sending me messages calling me names and guilt-tripping me, saying I'm tearing the family apart. Some friends have reached out, saying I should attend, because it's her wedding and I'm overreacting. Others have been supportive, acknowledging that public humiliation isn't acceptable and that I have the right to protect my mental health. I keep thinking about the years of feeling like I was second best, the constant comparisons, and then being made fun of in front of everyone I care about. I feel like if I go to the wedding, I'm condoning her behavior, and I don't think I can do that without feeling resentful for the rest of my life. I want to maintain some relationship with my family, but I also don't want to be forced into a situation where I'll be mocked again. I don't know if I'm being too sensitive or if it's fair for me to prioritize my mental health over attending my sister's wedding. I also worry that this decision will permanently damage my relationship with Emma, but I honestly feel like I have no other option. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she publicly humiliated me multiple times, or should I just suck it up for the sake of family harmony? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after what happened last summer. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I live in a small but cozy 2-bedroom apartment in the city, and I work long hours as a software engineer. I love having a clean, organized home, and I'm very protective of my personal space. My sister, Emily, 28F, has always been more of a free spirit. She's charming, impulsive, and has a tendency to make decisions without thinking about the consequences. I love her dearly, but sometimes I feel like she drags me into situations I'd rather avoid. Last summer, Emily got engaged to a man named Jason, 30M. I hadn't spent much time with him before the engagement, but I try to be welcoming. I know she's happy, and I genuinely want that for her. However, within the first month of them being together, Jason started dropping subtle hints that he might need a place to crash whenever he came to town. At first, I assumed he meant hotels, but one day, Emily mentioned casually that Jason had asked if he could stay at my place during a weekend when they were visiting from out of state. I was taken aback. I told Emily I wasn't comfortable with strangers staying in my apartment. She tried to persuade me by saying, "He's family now. You'll love him once you get to know him." I said no politely but firmly. Emily pouted, then dropped the topic. That should have been the end of it. Fast forward to July. Emily and Jason were visiting, and one Friday night, I came home from work to find Jason sitting on my couch. I hadn't invited him. I immediately felt my chest tighten because I'm someone who values boundaries. I asked, Jason, what are you doing here?" He looked slightly embarrassed and said, "Emily said it was okay." I was furious. Emily had apparently told him it was fine without even asking me. I told him he couldn't stay and that he needed to leave. Jason tried to argue, saying it was just for one night, and I could be nice about it. I explained that it wasn't about one night. It was about respecting my space and my rules. He eventually left, but the tension lingered. Emily texted me all night, asking me why I was being so mean and that I should let him stay just this once. I didn't respond because I was still too upset. After that incident, I made it very clear to Emily that her fiancé was not allowed to stay at my apartment under any circumstances. I also started avoiding spending time with them in my home, preferring to meet them at cafes, restaurants, or parks. Emily was upset and started making passive-aggressive comments about how I don't really care about family and that I was too uptight. I tried to brush it off, but I admit it stung. I felt guilty for causing tension, but I also knew that letting Jason stay would make me feel unsafe and disrespected. Then, last month, the real breaking point happened. Emily called me, sounding frantic, saying that Jason had a flat tire while driving through the city and couldn't get it fixed until late at night. She pleaded with me to let him stay over. I took a deep breath and reminded her that I had already explained my boundaries. She said, "Come on, he's your future brother-in-law. What kind of sister are you?" I told her calmly but firmly that I could not compromise my boundaries, even in an emergency. I suggested calling a 24-hour hotel or an Uber to a nearby friend's place, but Emily insisted that it wasn't the same. I held my ground, and eventually, she reluctantly found a hotel. After that incident, Emily stopped speaking to me for almost 2 weeks. Our family got involved because my parents were upset about the tension. They said I should consider how this might affect Emily's wedding, and that I should try to be more accommodating. I explained that I'm not trying to ruin her wedding. I just want to feel safe in my own home. My parents said I was being stubborn and family shouldn't have hard boundaries like that. Emily eventually called me again, and we had a long, tense conversation. She admitted that she understood my point of view, but said she felt hurt because I wouldn't treat Jason like family. I tried to explain that respecting my boundaries was a form of love too. I don't mind spending time with them, taking them out for dinner, or helping in other ways, but having someone stay overnight in my space crossed the line. Now, Emily is still upset, and I keep getting subtle comments from other relatives about how I need to learn to be more generous, and not everyone has a home like yours. You should use it to help people you care about. I feel like I'm being punished for having a personal boundary. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my apartment after what happened last summer. I understand Emily sees it as a small favor and a sign of family support, but for me, it was a violation of trust and my personal space. I'm worried that my relationship with Emily may never fully recover, and I hate feeling like I have to defend something so basic. I'm open to hearing whether I'm being unreasonable or if I'm justified in keeping my boundaries firm. I want to support Emily and Jason, but I don't want to feel unsafe or coerced in my own home. AITA for refusing to let my younger sister's fiancé stay at my house, even though it caused a huge fight. I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 28F. Growing up, we shared everything from clothes to secrets, and even though we have very different personalities, I'm more introverted and she's very social. I've always tried to support her. Over the years, I've watched her go through relationships, some good, some not so great, and I've usually kept my opinions to myself unless she specifically asked for advice. A few months ago, Emily got engaged to a man named Kyle, 30M. When she first introduced him to me, I tried to be welcoming. He was polite enough, but something about him just felt off to me. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it wasn't anything concrete, just gut instinct. I decided to give him a chance, thinking maybe I was being overly judgmental. Everything seemed fine until Emily asked if Kyle could stay at my house for a week. I live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment, which I share with my cat and a roommate, and I've never hosted anyone for an extended period. I explained this to her, saying that my space was limited and that I wasn't really comfortable with a week-long stay. I offered a compromise. Kyle could stay for a night or two, but a whole week would be difficult. Emily seemed upset, but didn't push at first. Then the problem started escalating. She mentioned that Kyle's apartment was being renovated, so they had nowhere else to stay. I suggested a hotel or Airbnb, but she insisted that it would be easier and cheaper for them to stay with me. I tried to explain again that I didn't have the space or the energy to host someone for that long. I also told her that I valued my alone time, especially since I work from home and need a quiet environment. She accused me of being selfish, saying I was prioritizing my comfort over her fiancé's needs. The tension grew over the next few weeks. Emily kept bringing up the stay in casual conversations, trying to guilt me into agreeing. Kyle also started messaging me directly, asking if it would be okay to crash at my place. I politely reiterated that it wasn't feasible. One evening, Emily called me in tears, saying that Kyle felt unwelcome and that I was ruining the start of their married life. I felt terrible, but I also felt I had to stick to my boundaries. Finally, a week before their planned visit, Emily showed up at my apartment unannounced with Kyle. She expected me to say yes, and when I said no, she became furious. She accused me of being controlling and unsupportive. Kyle chimed in, saying that it would have been just for a week and that I was overreacting. I told them again that it was not going to happen, and if they wanted to stay somewhere, they would need to make other arrangements. Emily left in anger, slamming the door, and Kyle texted later that night, calling me inflexible and rude. Since then, the relationship between Emily and me has been extremely strained. She refuses to speak to me unless it's absolutely necessary, and I feel guilty for causing such a rift, but at the same time, I feel like I did the right thing. I never said she couldn't see me or that she couldn't visit, only that I wasn't comfortable hosting a week-long stay. I've tried reaching out, offering to meet at a coffee shop or take her and Kyle out for dinner, but she keeps declining. Some of our mutual friends have chimed in, saying that I should have just bit the bullet and let them stay, and that I'm being unreasonable for not wanting to help family. Others have said that I'm completely justified and that my home is my sanctuary and I shouldn't be forced to host anyone if I don't want to. I feel stuck between wanting to maintain my relationship with my sister and maintaining my personal boundaries. I also worry that if I give in now, it will set a precedent where she feels entitled to my space whenever she wants. But part of me feels guilty for letting us simple disagreement escalate into what feels like a permanent rift. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my place for a week, even though it caused a huge fight and ongoing tension. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she criticized my home. I, 32F, have always been close with my younger sister, Emily, 28F, but over the last year, tensions have been rising between us. To give some background, I live in a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. I've lived there for 5 years, and while it's not extravagant, I've worked hard to make it comfortable and welcoming. Emily, on the other hand, has always been more extravagant and has expensive tastes. She rents a fancy apartment downtown and has a social media lifestyle that revolves around looking perfect. About a year ago, Emily got engaged to her fiancé, Jake, 30M. When she told me she wanted to get married in the summer of next year, I was genuinely happy. We started talking about the wedding plans, and I assumed I would be involved in helping her organize some aspects of it. I live fairly close to the city where she wanted the wedding, and she had mentioned casually that she liked the idea of a backyard wedding. I thought that was flattering, and I was willing to help her make it happen. Everything started going downhill when she came to visit my home to see if it could work. She walked through the house and immediately started pointing out things she didn't like. She said the living room looked too cramped for her guests, that the backyard was not scenic enough for photos, and that the furniture didn't match her wedding color palette. I tried to explain that we could rearrange things, maybe rent a tent and decorations, and that the charm of my backyard was part of what made it special. But she kept insisting that the house was too small and not Instagram-worthy, and even went so far as to say, "I can't believe you're living like this." I was stunned and hurt, but I tried to stay calm. I asked if maybe she wanted to rent a small event space nearby instead, and she immediately shot that down, saying it would ruin the intimate and personal vibe she wanted. She insisted she wanted the wedding at my house, but made it clear she wasn't happy with the space as it was. I thought she was joking at first, but she seemed genuinely serious, and every suggestion I made to compromise was met with criticism. Fast forward a few months. Emily kept dropping hints about wanting me to host the wedding at my house. She even went as far as sending me Pinterest boards with elaborate setups, including outdoor chandeliers, a rented dance floor, and flower arrangements I could never afford on my own. I tried to tell her that I wasn't in a financial position to make all of her Pinterest dreams come true, but she said I was being unhelpful and unsupportive. The breaking point came last week. She came over with Jake and a wedding planner to measure the space. They spent nearly 3 hours walking around the house, taking pictures and making comments. The planner was polite, but clearly stressed, trying to accommodate Emily's demands. Emily told me she wanted to have a seating plan for 150 people in my backyard with a stage for the band, a cocktail area, a tent, and a photo booth. She also wanted to rent additional bathrooms because my guests deserve more than your 2 bathrooms. At that point, I finally said, "Emily, I need to be honest. This is my home, and I can't turn it into a full-scale wedding venue. I don't have the money, the space, or the energy to do everything you're asking. I want you to have a beautiful wedding, but can't be here." She got extremely angry. She accused me of being selfish, unsupportive, and ruining her special day. She said that as her sister, it was my responsibility to host and make things perfect. I tried to explain that being a good sister doesn't mean turning my house into a rented wedding hall, but she refused to listen. She left, slamming my door and sending me texts calling me the worst sister ever and saying she would have no relationship with me if I didn't host her wedding. I told her I wouldn't host the wedding, and I offered to help in other ways, helping choose a venue, assisting with decorations, or helping with small DIY projects. She said none of that mattered and accused me of being cold and heartless. Since then, my family has been divided. My parents think I'm overreacting and should do this one thing for my sister. Some of my friends have said I'm right to set boundaries and that Emily is being unreasonable. I feel guilty because I do love my sister and I want her to have a happy wedding, but I also feel like she's completely ignoring my feelings and trying to force me to do something I can't realistically manage. Now, she hasn't spoken to me except for short, angry texts, and she started telling extended family that I refused to host her wedding out of spite. I'm worried this will permanently damage our relationship, but I also can't see myself hosting the wedding under these conditions. So, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she criticized my home and made unrealistic demands? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what she did to me? This is going to be a long one, so bear with me. I, 29F, have a younger sister, Emily, 26F, and for as long as I can remember, our relationship has been complicated. We were close when we were kids, but as we got older, things became tense. Emily has always been competitive, and I guess I'm more easygoing, which she sometimes interpreted as me looking down on her or being better than her. I don't feel that way at all, but it's hard to argue with someone who is convinced of her narrative. Last year, Emily got engaged to Mark, 28M. They've been dating for about 4 years, and I honestly like him. He's smart, funny, and generally a good guy. However, Emily has been pushing boundaries with me since the engagement, and things came to a head recently. When she got engaged, I offered to help with wedding planning in any way I could. I suggested I could handle decorations or help with invitations, small things that wouldn't require me to be overly involved if she didn't want me doing certain things. Emily insisted she wanted me to help with the invitations specifically. I thought it was a nice gesture and said yes. A few weeks later, I sent her a draft of the invitation I designed. I chose a simple, elegant layout with neutral colors and clear font, which is generally what she described wanting. When I sent it to her, she immediately called me, furious. She claimed the design was too boring, generic, and that I had completely ruined her vision. She then said she didn't want my help at all and that I was no longer allowed to touch any wedding planning. I tried to stay calm, saying I could adjust it or we could discuss what she actually wanted, but she kept escalating, saying she didn't understand why I always had to make everything about me. Fast forward to a month ago, Emily and Mark decided to host a bridal shower. They asked me to come, which I agreed to. At the shower, Emily's best friend organized a small game where guests had to write advice for the bride. I wrote something heartfelt, like, always communicate and support each other. Simple and generic, but kind. When Emily read it aloud, she scoffed and said it was completely uninspired and that I clearly didn't care about her wedding or her happiness. A few people looked uncomfortable, and I felt my face go red. I tried to shrug it off and smile, but I was hurt. A few days later, Emily called me crying. She said she felt like I was intentionally trying to sabotage her wedding, and that she couldn't forgive me if I wasn't fully on board with everything she wanted. I tried to explain that I wanted her to have a great wedding and that my intentions were good, but she wasn't hearing me. She then said something that really hit me. She didn't want me at the wedding unless I could act like a happy, supportive guest, because apparently my previous actions had made her doubt that I could. Now, this is where things get worse. A week ago, Emily sent out a group text to our family with all the wedding details, including seating arrangements. I noticed my name was nowhere on the guest list. I asked her privately if I was invited, and she said, "We're not sure you're going to be able to enjoy yourself without causing drama." We decided to limit the guest list, and it was easier not to include you. I felt blindsided. I'm her sister. I've never caused real drama at family events. I wasn't even trying to impose myself anymore. I called her, and she said she didn't want to fight about it, that she just wanted a peaceful wedding, and that I should respect her decision. At this point, I've been hurt, angry, and confused. I told her that cutting me out of her wedding was incredibly unfair and that I deserved at least a conversation before being excluded. She said she had considered it, but ultimately, she didn't want to deal with my passive-aggressive tendencies, and that Mark supported the decision. I decided I wouldn't go to the wedding, even if she insisted. I feel like being excluded and being treated like my presence is toxic is beyond what I should tolerate. Our parents are upset with me, saying I should just go for the sake of family. But I can't bring myself to attend an event where my sister has made it clear she doesn't want me there. I tried reaching out one last time to Emily, telling her I love her and that I hope she has a wonderful wedding, but I won't be attending. She responded angrily, accusing me of being selfish and petty for refusing. Our family is split. Some say I'm justified, others say I'm overreacting and that I should swallow my pride. I know family dynamics are complicated, and weddings are emotionally charged. I don't want to cause lasting damage, but I also can't ignore the way I've been treated. I can't help but wonder if I'm in the wrong for standing my ground and refusing to attend a wedding where I'm essentially unwelcome. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after everything that happened? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's past? I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 28F. We grew up close, but as adults, our paths diverged significantly. I work as a social worker in a nonprofit, and my life has been largely quiet, focused on helping others and maintaining stability. Emily, on the other hand, is a free spirit. She's adventurous, spontaneous, and has always had a history of making impulsive decisions that often ripple into the lives of those around her. Despite our differences, I've always tried to support her the best I can. About a year ago, Emily started dating a man named Jason, 30M. At first, I was cautiously optimistic because she seemed genuinely happy. Jason is charming and outgoing, and he works in finance. I don't usually have an issue with her dating, but I've had interactions with Jason that have made me uneasy. Early on, I discovered through mutual acquaintances that Jason had a history of manipulative behavior in past relationships. There were allegations of emotional abuse, though nothing was legally proven. While some people might dismiss that as gossip, Emily had a history of dating men with serious red flags, and I know her patterns well enough to recognize potential warning signs. I tried to approach the topic delicately. I told Emily that I was concerned and wanted to make sure she was safe and aware of his past. Emily, predictably, brushed it off and told me that she was capable of making her own decisions. I respected her autonomy, though I stayed observant from a distance. Fast forward 6 months, Emily and Jason got engaged. The announcement was on social media, and the engagement party followed. I attended, albeit awkwardly, and I noticed some subtle behaviors from Jason that made me increasingly uncomfortable. He seemed controlling in small ways. How Emily should arrange her schedule, who she should see, even jokingly telling guests at the party what they should and shouldn't do. It was subtle, but familiar enough that my alarms started ringing again. A few weeks ago, Emily formally invited me to her wedding. That's when things escalated. She wanted me to be her maid of honor. I was stunned. I had never imagined taking on such a prominent role, given my concerns about Jason. I explained to Emily that I didn't feel comfortable participating in the wedding due to Jason's past behavior and my ongoing worries about how he might treat her. I made it clear that my decision was about the dynamics I had observed and the potential for emotional harm. I reassured her that I loved her and wanted her happiness, but I couldn't in good conscience support this union in a celebratory capacity. Emily reacted extremely negatively. She accused me of trying to sabotage her happiness, of being controlling, and of bringing up the past unnecessarily. She told me that if I truly loved her, I would put my feelings aside and be there for her. She even called our parents and tried to pressure them into convincing me to attend, but I held my ground. Since then, family tensions have skyrocketed. Our parents are caught in the middle. They understand my perspective, but also don't want to alienate Emily. Extended family members have reached out, some agreeing with me, others calling me selfish. Emily has stopped speaking to me entirely and has unfollowed me on all social media platforms. I've been reflecting on whether I overstepped. I fully understand that Jason's past is technically his own business, and that Emily is an adult capable of making her own choices. I also know that refusing to attend her wedding, especially as her maid of honor, is a huge deal. The part of me that worries about family harmony feels guilty for potentially causing a rift. However, another part of me feels justified. I've seen enough patterns in Emily's life to know when she might be stepping into a harmful situation. I don't believe my presence at the wedding would be supportive. I would feel like I was condoning something I fundamentally disagreed with, and that might come through in subtle ways, creating even more tension. Adding to the complexity, I've received messages from mutual friends of Emily and Jason who have hinted that Jason has a tendency to manipulate situations to his advantage, often making those around him feel guilty for voicing concerns. This only reinforces my hesitation. I've tried to express to Emily that this decision doesn't mean I don't care about her, but she interprets it as me trying to control her life. I honestly don't want to create an irreversible rift, but I also cannot ignore my intuition, which is screaming that this relationship might be toxic in ways Emily is not prepared to see yet. I understand that weddings are emotional events, and that my refusal may seem dramatic or selfish to outsiders. But I've tried to weigh my own mental well-being against my desire to support my sister. I also worry that if I attend, my presence might not be entirely genuine, and any negativity on my part could overshadow what should be a celebratory day. I've even considered offering an alternative, like helping Emily plan pre-wedding events or being involved in smaller ways that don't require me to be at the ceremony itself, but Emily has rejected these compromises outright. She insists that if I cannot be fully involved, I should not be involved at all. I feel like I'm stuck between protecting my own values and maintaining a relationship with my sister. The last time we spoke, she told me she was disappointed beyond words, and that I was making her wedding a battlefield of past mistakes. I haven't replied since, and our family is now in a constant state of tension. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding due to my concerns about her fiancé and his past behavior. I'm trying to balance my conscience with family obligations, but I'm afraid I may have already caused irreparable harm. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to babysit my sister's kids while she travels for work. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. At least that's how I'm perceived. My younger sister, Mia, 28F, has a career that requires her to travel frequently, sometimes for weeks at a time. She has 2 kids, Lily, 7F, and Noah, 5M. Growing up, I was close to Mia, but over the years, our dynamics shifted. I became the default adult whenever she had issues or needed support, and I've always felt a little taken for granted, though I tried to tell myself it was part of being family. For context, I work full-time as a nurse at a busy hospital, which includes overnight shifts and long hours. My schedule is unpredictable, and it's physically and emotionally demanding. Despite this, Mia has frequently asked me to watch her kids when she has to travel, sometimes giving me little notice. I've always tried to accommodate her because I love my niece and nephew, and I understand that her job is demanding. But over time, it became more of an expectation than a favor. A few months ago, Mia called me in a panic. She had been offered a last-minute opportunity to speak at a conference overseas. She asked me to watch Lily and Noah for 2 weeks. I told her I couldn't commit to that long because of my work schedule and the fact that I live in a small apartment that isn't ideal for children. I suggested hiring a local babysitter or asking her husband, who is more flexible, to handle the kids while she was away. She got upset and said she had no one else she could rely on and seemed to imply that I was being selfish. I told her my limits were real and I couldn't drop everything for 2 weeks with almost no notice. She ended the call saying she'd figure it out, which I thought was the end of it. A week later, she sent me a text asking me to take the kids for just a weekend while she did a short trip. I agreed, thinking a weekend was manageable. When the weekend arrived, it quickly became chaotic. Lily had a school project due, Noah had a soccer tournament, and both kids were sick with colds. I ended up taking them to the doctor, attending the tournament, and trying to manage homework, all while juggling my own work calls and responsibilities. By the time Mia returned, I was exhausted, and I politely told her I couldn't do another weekend on short notice. Since then, she has continued to ask me sporadically, and every time I decline, she makes comments like, "I guess I'll just be a terrible mom then," or "I thought family was supposed to help each other." Last week, she called me again, saying she had to leave the country for 3 days to handle a work emergency, and again asked me to take care of the kids. I told her I was not available. She reacted angrily, saying she couldn't believe I wouldn't help, accusing me of being selfish and uncaring. She also said that my refusal was letting her kids down and that they love spending time with me, so I should put their happiness above my own schedule. I explained that I love them, but my life is busy and I have obligations that can't be paused just because she has work travel. I offered again to help her find a professional sitter or to coordinate with her husband. She was furious, saying that I was making it all about me and that family should support each other without conditions. Our argument ended with her saying she would limit contact with me until I understood the value of family. I'm now feeling guilty because my parents are pressuring me too, saying I should help my sister and that I'm being unreasonable. They say I'm technically able to help and that my work schedule shouldn't stop me from stepping up for family. But on the other hand, I feel like I've been the default caregiver for years, often sacrificing my own rest, mental health, and personal time, and my boundaries are repeatedly dismissed. I want to be supportive, but I also want my family to respect that I have limits and responsibilities. I don't think being busy or needing personal time makes me selfish, yet everyone in my family seems to think it does. I've tried explaining that I will help when I can, with enough notice, but it feels like that isn't enough. I'm also concerned that giving in now will set a precedent that I will always drop everything, which I simply cannot do. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to babysit my sister's kids on short notice when I have my own obligations. I genuinely love them, and I want to spend time with them under reasonable circumstances, but I also want to maintain my own life and boundaries. AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices at Thanksgiving and causing a huge family fight. This all started at last year's Thanksgiving, but the tension has been brewing for months. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Mia, 28F, and we've always had a fairly close relationship, despite the usual sibling bickering. Our parents live across the country, so holidays are always a big deal for us, and everyone usually makes the trek to whichever city my mom decides to host in that year. I'm married to Dan, 34M, and we have 2 kids, ages 6 and 4. Mia has a daughter, Lily, who just turned 5. Mia has always been a very free-spirited parent. She's vegan, doesn't really believe in rules, and tends to let Lily do whatever she wants. Over the years, I've expressed my concern in small, casual ways, but I've mostly kept my opinions to myself because I know parenting is a personal choice. However, over the last year, I've noticed that Lily has started acting out in ways that are hard to ignore. She's extremely impulsive, doesn't listen to basic instructions, and seems to have no sense of boundaries. For example, at birthday parties, she grabs toys from other kids, refuses to wait her turn, and throws tantrums when things don't go her way. Dan and I have tried to be patient and understanding, but it's becoming increasingly challenging. Last Thanksgiving, we were all gathered at my mom's house. The meal was being prepared, and the kids were playing in the living room. As usual, Lily was running around, yelling and grabbing at the toys of my kids. I gently reminded her to ask before taking something that wasn't hers, and Mia laughed it off, saying, "She's just being a kid. Let her have fun." I tried again a few minutes later when Lily pushed my son to get a toy he was holding. Mia shrugged and told me I was overreacting. I felt frustrated, but I didn't want to make a scene in front of everyone. Things escalated when we sat down for dinner. Lily refused to sit at the table, insisting she wanted to eat standing up. Mia encouraged this, telling her it was fine and that she didn't have to follow the boring rules that adults follow. I couldn't help myself. I looked at Mia and said quietly, "I know you want her to be free, but she's being disrespectful and unsafe. You can't let her run wild like this." Mia looked shocked and a little offended, and my mom gave me a warning glance, clearly worried I was about to start a fight. Lily, unsurprisingly, interpreted my comment as criticism and began whining loudly. I tried to calm her down and suggested she sit in a chair, but Mia interrupted, telling me to stop trying to control her. That's when I snapped. I raised my voice and said, "This isn't about control. It's about teaching her basic manners and respecting other people. You can't just ignore everything she does because it's convenient for you." Mia got very defensive and accused me of attacking her parenting. I tried to clarify that I wasn't trying to criticize her as a person, just the behavior I was seeing, but the tension had already escalated. My parents got involved, my dad defending Mia's approach, and my mom trying to mediate. What followed was a full-blown argument in front of everyone. Words were exchanged about control, freedom, and responsibility. At one point, Mia shouted, "Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with rules, your kids wouldn't be so uptight." Dan and I were stunned. It felt like an attack on our entire parenting philosophy. By the end of the evening, everyone was visibly upset. My parents were frustrated with me for confronting Mia publicly, and Mia refused to speak to me for the rest of the night. The drive home with my family was silent, and the tension lingered for weeks afterward. Mia has since avoided inviting me over, and our communication has dropped to occasional text messages. I feel guilty because it was a family gathering, but I also feel frustrated that Mia seems unable or unwilling to see how her lack of boundaries is affecting Lily and others around her. In the months following, I try to reach out, suggesting that we talk privately about Lily's behavior and ways we could support each other, but Mia has refused. Our parents think I overstepped by confronting her in public and have gently suggested I give her space. Dan is supportive of my position, saying he understands my frustration, but he also worries that the argument has permanently damaged my relationship with Mia. What's bothering me is that this is not a one-time incident. Lily's behavior continues to be disruptive at every family event. My kids are affected, and I feel like I can't protect them without causing more drama. On the other hand, I keep thinking that maybe I should have waited until a private moment to bring up my concerns, even if the behavior was happening in front of me. I've been replaying the event in my head constantly. Some friends say I was right to stand up for my children and for what I believe is responsible parenting. Others say I should have kept my mouth shut to avoid ruining the holiday. My question is this: AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices in front of the family, even if I had valid concerns about Lily's behavior? I want to maintain a relationship with my sister, but it feels impossible when I see what I see and don't feel like she's willing to make any changes. I've tried to be understanding, tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, but every family gathering turns into a stress-filled minefield. I'm genuinely torn between protecting my children and respecting my sister's parenting choices. I guess what I'm looking for is perspective. Was I really the asshole for speaking up in that moment, or should I have swallowed my frustration for the sake of peace? I don't want this argument to define my relationship with Mia, but I also don't want to stand by while I feel like my children are being negatively impacted by behaviors that could be addressed with some guidance and boundaries. I feel trapped in this cycle of resentment and guilt, unsure how to navigate future holidays or family gatherings without causing another explosive confrontation. I'm torn between the moral responsibility I feel as a parent and the desire to maintain family harmony, which now feels fragile at best. Every text from Mia is polite but distant, and it's clear the incident has left a lasting mark. I'm unsure whether to attempt a mediated discussion with my parents present or wait for her to approach me, but I fear any further confrontation might permanently damage our sibling relationship. The entire situation has left me anxious about upcoming holidays, and I keep debating whether it was truly wrong to voice my concerns or if my hesitation in the past only allowed these issues to escalate to this point. It's a constant internal conflict between standing firm on my values and preserving family bonds, which now feel tenuous. I would love honest opinions about whether I handled this correctly and how I can move forward without creating additional conflict. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. I, 28F, come from a fairly close-knit family, though we've always had our differences. My younger sister, Emma, 26F, has always been a bit more dramatic, let's say. We have a complicated relationship. She can be charming and sweet, but when she wants something, she expects everyone to bend to her will, and our parents often indulge her. I have learned to navigate around her moods over the years, but this last incident has left me questioning how far is too far when it comes to family loyalty. Emma got engaged to a man named Derek, 30M, about 6 months ago. When I first met Derek, I wasn't particularly impressed. He seemed arrogant and dismissive, but I didn't want to judge too quickly. Over time, however, his behavior began to make me uncomfortable. He often makes condescending jokes at Emma's expense in front of others, and I've noticed he tends to belittle people who don't share his opinions. He's also extremely controlling. Emma has always had her quirks, but since dating Derek, she seems almost like a different person, more anxious, more hesitant to voice her thoughts. The wedding planning process has been a minefield. Derek insists on having the wedding exactly his way, down to minute details, often ignoring Emma's wishes. He even tried to dictate the seating arrangements and the guest list, prioritizing his friends and family over hers. This caused multiple arguments that I had to mediate between Emma and Derek. I tried to stay neutral, but Derek was rude to me during some of these interactions, dismissing my suggestions and making passive-aggressive comments about my lifestyle choices. The breaking point happened last week. Emma called me, distraught, because Derek had told her she couldn't invite some of her close friends, claiming they weren't the kind of people he wanted around on his special day. Emma, upset and confused, asked for my advice. I told her that she should stand her ground and not let anyone, especially her fiancé, dictate who she can and cannot have at her wedding. I stressed that her wedding is her day, and she deserves to surround herself with people who love her. After our conversation, I spoke privately with Derek, thinking I could approach the situation diplomatically. I explained that excluding Emma's friends would hurt her feelings and that compromise was necessary. He responded by laughing at me, calling me dramatic and overly emotional, and telling me I didn't understand relationships or weddings because I was single. He then proceeded to insult my career, my choice to live alone, and even my fashion sense. I was stunned. I tried to remain calm and leave, but he followed me to the door, continuing to mock me. It was humiliating. When I told Emma what happened, she was upset but seemed hesitant to confront Derek herself. She said she loved him and wanted to avoid conflict, but I could see the tension and fear in her eyes. Over the next few days, Derek continued to make comments about me whenever Emma and I were in the same space, questioning why I couldn't move on with my life and implying that my opinions were irrelevant because I wasn't part of his inner circle. I reached a decision. I told Emma that I would not attend the wedding unless Derek apologized to me for his behavior. I explained that I wanted to support her, but I could not be in the same room as someone who treated me with such disrespect. Emma was torn. She said she didn't want to lose me over a man she loved, but also that she didn't want to stand up to Derek, right before the wedding. Our parents got involved after I sent them a detailed account of Derek's behavior. They were divided. My dad said I was right to protect myself and that Derek's actions were unacceptable, while my mom urged me to attend for the sake of family unity and to avoid embarrassing Emma. Since then, tensions have escalated. Derek has been messaging me indirectly through Emma, asking why, and being so petty and implying that I'm trying to sabotage their wedding. Emma has been stressed out and keeps telling me that she wants me there, but that I need to understand her situation. I feel caught between supporting my sister and not compromising my self-respect. I've offered to meet Derek in a neutral setting, mediated by a family member, to try to resolve things, but he refuses to acknowledge any wrongdoing. Friends and some extended family members are divided. Some say I am justified in refusing to attend because no one should tolerate being insulted or belittled. Others say I am overreacting and that I should prioritize my sister's happiness over my discomfort, suggesting that weddings are stressful and I should grin and bear it. I am struggling because I do want to be there for my sister, but the idea of sitting through a ceremony and reception with someone who openly disrespects me makes me anxious and angry. I've tried to set boundaries and maintain civility, but Derek seems to interpret any limit I set as an attack. I also feel guilty because I worry that my absence might hurt Emma more than it protects me. On the other hand, I can't shake the feeling that attending would send a message that his behavior is acceptable. I want to protect my mental health and self-respect, but I don't want my sister to resent me for missing one of the most important days of her life. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior, even though she wants me there. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of family tension. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my family, especially my older sister, Claire, 36F. Growing up, Claire was the golden child. She excelled at school, was popular, and seemed to have everyone's admiration. Meanwhile, I struggled socially and academically, and it always felt like no matter what I achieved, it was never enough to gain recognition in the family. My parents have always been biased toward Claire, and this dynamic created a deep-rooted tension between us that has persisted into adulthood. After college, I moved to a different city and slowly distanced myself from my family. Over time, I built a career and a life of my own, but the emotional strain from my family lingered. Claire's accomplishments were constantly highlighted on social media and through family gatherings, while my milestones were barely acknowledged. I tried to maintain civility, but I've never felt fully comfortable or welcomed when I was around them. Despite this, I still kept in touch occasionally, mostly with my parents. A few months ago, I received an invitation to Claire's wedding. It was a lavish affair, and the invitation was sent with the expectation that everyone attend. When I read it, my first reaction was shock. Not because I wasn't happy for her, but because it immediately brought up years of unresolved resentment. I felt that attending would require me to put on a facade and endure being in an environment where I have always felt invisible and judged. I debated it for a while, but my anxiety and past experiences with my family weighed heavily on me. I finally decided to decline, sending a polite RSVP that I could not attend due to prior commitments. After sending the RSVP, Claire called me, and our conversation quickly escalated. She accused me of being selfish and dramatically overreacting. She said that family comes first and that my absence would be noticed and disappointing. I tried to explain my perspective, that I had felt marginalized for years and that attending the wedding would be emotionally taxing for me. But she dismissed it, saying I was making everything about myself. The conversation ended with her telling me that she would remember this forever, and that our relationship was now strained beyond repair. Following that call, I received a barrage of messages from other family members. My parents guilt-tripped me, saying that it was unthinkable that I wouldn't support my sister on such a milestone. Cousins and distant relatives chimed in, suggesting that I was overreacting and that family obligations trumped personal grievances. The more I tried to explain myself, the more I felt misunderstood and attacked. It became apparent that attending would not be celebrated as a show of goodwill, but rather as an obligation to erase past grievances that nobody else acknowledged. A week after declining, Claire posted on social media a picture of her engagement announcement with a caption thanking everyone who had been there from the beginning. While she didn't mention me by name, I felt the omission was pointed. This fueled my sense that even after all these years, my presence and my achievements were not recognized or valued. At this point, my decision not to attend felt less like avoidance and more like a boundary I had to set to protect my mental health. I received mixed reactions from friends outside the family. Some say I am justified and that I should prioritize my own well-being, while others argue that family milestones should be celebrated despite personal grievances. I also worry that refusing to attend might deepen the rift with my parents, who are understandably hurt by my choice. However, I struggle to reconcile the notion of putting on a smile and pretending everything is fine when I've spent decades feeling undervalued and excluded. Recently, I ran into a colleague whose spouse had a similar family dynamic. They suggested writing a heartfelt letter to Claire, expressing support and love from afar without physically attending the wedding. I considered this, but I am unsure whether it would be seen as sufficient or just another way for the family to continue blaming me for not doing enough. I still think about what it would mean to attend. On one hand, I could attempt to bridge the gap and show that I care, but I also know myself well enough to know that being present would be emotionally exhausting, and I might leave the event feeling worse than I do now. On the other hand, not attending may solidify the narrative that I am selfish or ungrateful, even though my reasons are deeply personal and tied to long-standing family trauma. I've tried to reach a compromise in my mind, but every option feels like a trap. Attend and sacrifice my mental health, or decline and risk alienating my family. I also wonder if my perception of the situation is skewed by past experiences, or if my family truly does have a pattern of behavior that has consistently excluded me. I don't want to be the villain, but I also don't want to erase my feelings to satisfy others. I've avoided family events for years, and this is the first time it feels like a definitive break. Part of me fears that declining will be the moment they stop seeing me as part of the family at all. At the same time, I know that if I attend, it won't be authentic, and it may damage my own sense of self-worth. I feel trapped between familial obligation and self-preservation, and I don't know whether my choice is fair or whether I am overreacting. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of years of family tension and emotional marginalization. I want to protect my mental health, but I also don't want to be seen as callous or disloyal. How do I navigate the fine line between self-care and familial responsibility, and is there a way to do so without permanently damaging my relationships? AITA for refusing to let my younger sister's fiancé stay in my house after he caused a huge scene during a family gathering. This is going to be long, but I need perspective because my family thinks I overreacted. I, 32F, live in a 3-bedroom house I bought on my own about 5 years ago. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, she was the more outgoing and charismatic one, while I was quieter and more introverted. Our relationship was never terrible, but it has had its ups and downs, mostly because Emily has a tendency to manipulate situations to get her way. I've learned over the years to set boundaries, but they don't always sit well with her. Emily has been dating her fiancé, Jake, 30M, for about 2 years. He seemed fine initially, funny, charming, and good to her. But over the last year, I've noticed behaviors that worry me. He could be extremely controlling with Emily, often speaking over her in group settings and making decisions for her without asking. I've tried to stay out of it, thinking it wasn't my place, but a recent incident forced me to intervene. Last month, Emily announced she and Jake would be visiting me for a weekend. I have a strict no party, no loud overnight guest policy in my house because I work from home and need peace. I communicated this clearly, telling Emily that they could come over for a dinner or a short visit, but overnight stays weren't possible. She seemed understanding at first. The day they arrived, things immediately fell off. Jake insisted on bringing a huge suitcase, claiming he'd accidentally overpacked and couldn't fit in Emily's luggage. I told him politely that there wasn't space for extra bags in the guest room, but he kept insisting. Emily apologized and said she'd deal with it, but Jake kept pushing, saying it was just one weekend, and why make a big deal about it? I stayed firm, repeating that my house rules were clear. Dinner went okay initially, but after a few drinks, Jake started making comments about how small my house was and how I should consider renting out a room. I ignored it at first, hoping he'd stop, but he kept pressing, making it clear he didn't respect my boundaries. I felt a tight knot in my chest because Emily wasn't saying anything to stop him, and I could tell she was nervous. Later that evening, Emily suggested they could stay in the guest room anyway, which made me uncomfortable. I explained again that my house wasn't set up for overnight guests, and if they wanted to stay, they would need to book a hotel nearby. Jake reacted dramatically, slamming his hands on the table and yelling that I was being ridiculous and making everything about myself. He accused me of being selfish and implied that Emily should have chosen him over me. I was stunned. I calmly told him that raising his voice was unacceptable and that he needed to leave if he couldn't respect my house rules. Emily tried to mediate, saying maybe I could bend the rules just this once, but I refused. I felt like Jake was using her to pressure me, and I wasn't willing to compromise my boundaries. At that point, Jake stormed out to the living room and continued yelling about how I was a control freak and that Emily deserved better than a sister like me. The argument escalated, and he ended up knocking over a lamp in anger. Thankfully, nothing was broken, but it was terrifying. I asked him to leave immediately, and he eventually did, though not without threatening to make this a family issue. Emily stayed in the car outside for a while before coming back in and apologizing, saying she felt stuck between us. I reassured her that it wasn't her fault and that I wasn't angry at her, but I was furious at Jake for disrespecting my home and boundaries. The fallout was intense. Emily called me later that night, crying, saying she felt like I turned on her and that I was making it impossible for her to have a relationship. The next day, my parent called, asking why I wouldn't let Jake stay, and insisting that I was being dramatic. Even some of my extended family reached out, saying I should have just let it slide to keep the peace. Emily has since stopped speaking to me for a week, and she's hinted that she may reconsider our relationship if I don't apologize to Jake. I feel like I did the right thing by standing up for myself and my house. I have every right to enforce rules in my own home, and I do not think being respectful should ever include tolerating someone yelling, threatening, or causing a scene. On the other hand, I worry that maybe I overreacted and hurt Emily's feelings by refusing to compromise, even slightly. I'm torn because I value my relationship with my sister, but I also cannot let someone disrespect me or my home. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after he caused a huge scene. I'm bracing for people to say I should have just let it go, but I honestly don't think anyone in their right mind would feel comfortable with someone yelling and threatening in their home. I just want to know if I handled this appropriately or if I crossed a line somewhere. I've tried to stay calm, set boundaries clearly, and avoid escalating, but the situation escalated despite my best efforts. My family seems to think I'm the villain, and I'm starting to question myself. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded me from the planning? I, 32F, have always had a close relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 28F, but things have gotten tense over the past few months. Emily got engaged about a year ago, and from the start, I was genuinely excited for her. I've always been the kind of sister who loves planning and helping out, so naturally, I assumed I'd be included in some way in her wedding preparations. Initially, I didn't want to overstep, so I let her lead and offered help when she asked. But soon, it became clear that she wasn't seeking my input at all. Invitations to discuss the wedding were sent to our other sister, Lauren, 26F, and our mother, but I was completely left out. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe she just wanted a smaller planning circle. But as weeks went by, it became apparent that I wasn't just out of the loop, I was actively being excluded. I tried to bring it up casually with Emily, asking if she wanted my thoughts on the dress selection or the venue. She brushed me off, saying, "We already made decisions, don't worry about it." I accepted it, but it hurt. Wedding planning was something I genuinely wanted to be part of, and being sidelined made me feel unvalued. Things escalated when Emily decided to host a series of bridal events. She threw a bachelorette party and invited all of her friends, our cousins, and even Lauren, but I didn't get an invite. I reached out and asked if I could come, and her response was that she was keeping the bachelorette small and intimate. Later, I found out from other guests that there were actually over 20 people there, including several distant relatives and family friends. It felt deliberate, like she didn't want me there. The straw that broke the camel's back was the bridal shower. Emily and our mother were organizing it, and again, I wasn't invited. When I confronted my mother about it, she said, "Emily wanted it to be a surprise. Don't take it personally." I later learned from Lauren that the shower was specifically discussed without my involvement, and all the planning, gifts, and decisions were made without a single mention of me. At this point, I felt extremely hurt and excluded. I tried talking to Emily one-on-one to express how left out I felt, but she got defensive. She accused me of being too controlling and overstepping boundaries. I told her my only intention was to be involved as her sister, to help, and to celebrate with her. She insisted she didn't want my help and that I needed to respect her choices. As the wedding date approached, Emily sent out a group message to the family detailing the schedule. I realized I wasn't assigned any role, not a bridesmaid, not even a reader or usher. Nothing. At this point, I had to make a choice: attend and feel invisible or sit out entirely. After a lot of reflection, I decided to politely decline attending. I told Emily that while I loved her and wished her the best, I couldn't participate in a wedding where I felt deliberately excluded and unappreciated. The reaction from the family was immediate and polarizing. Emily and our mother were hurt and claimed I was being dramatic. Lauren supported my decision privately, but also said I should consider showing up for family harmony. Extended family reached out, some trying to mediate, some taking sides. My friends mostly agreed that I had a right to protect my emotional well-being, but I still felt guilty for the idea of missing my sister's wedding. I tried to explain my feelings in a letter to Emily, detailing how being excluded from planning, events, and roles made me feel like I didn't matter to her. I emphasized that my choice wasn't out of spite, but from a place of self-respect. Emily responded curtly, saying she was disappointed and hurt that I couldn't celebrate her happiness. She also accused me of holding a grudge and said that my absence would ruin the family dynamic. In the meantime, I've been getting mixed messages from relatives. Some say I should attend anyway and forgive and forget, while others understand why I chose not to be part of it. I've considered that maybe I'm being overly sensitive, but the repeated pattern of exclusion, from planning to events, feels intentional rather than circumstantial. I also have lingering anxiety about family gatherings after the wedding. People keep bringing up the wedding, the dress, and the gifts, and I feel like I'm being blamed for creating tension. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I only wanted to be included and to celebrate a milestone in my sister's life. To make matters worse, Emily recently posted wedding prep pictures on social media with our mother and Lauren, and my absence is noticeable. Friends and extended family have reached out to ask why I wasn't involved, which makes me feel further isolated. I've been careful not to say negative things publicly about Emily, but I feel like my side of the story isn't being acknowledged. I've reflected on whether I could have handled this differently. I could have insisted on attending events, even if I wasn't invited, or just gone to the wedding without participating actively, but I feel that would have been emotionally taxing and would have reinforced the pattern of being undervalued. My hope was that stepping back would signal to Emily and the family that exclusion has consequences, but now I wonder if I've made things worse. I'm sharing this because I genuinely don't know if I overreacted. My decision to skip the wedding was based on feeling repeatedly sidelined, not on trying to hurt anyone. But now, with family upset and Emily claiming I'm selfish, I'm second-guessing myself. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she repeatedly excluded me from the planning and events? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she asked me to lie for her? I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Emily, 32F. Growing up, she was the golden child in the family. Perfect grades, perfect friends, perfect everything. I was always the one in the background, quietly doing my thing and never really getting the praise I wanted. Despite that, I try to maintain a good relationship with her because family is important to me. Recently, things escalated in a way I never anticipated. Emily has been dating her fiancé, Mark, 33M, for 5 years, and they finally decided to get married. I was excited when she initially invited me to the wedding, and I genuinely wanted to be there. The problem started about a month before the wedding. Emily called me and told me something that completely shocked me. She said, "I need you to do me a huge favor. You know how my dad has been really strict about family traditions and appearances? Well, he's going to ask about my pregnancy plans, and I really don't want to deal with that conversation. Can you tell him I'm pregnant, even though I'm not?" At first, I thought she was joking. I laughed nervously and said, "Wait, you want me to lie to Dad about being pregnant?" She insisted she was serious and said it was all for appearances. According to her, her father has been subtly pressuring her to start a family, and she just wanted to get him off her back. She explained that he's the type to make a huge scene if he thinks she's being secretive or dishonest about family matters. I was immediately uncomfortable. Lying about something like that feels extremely personal and manipulative. I told her I didn't feel right doing that and that I couldn't be part of deceiving my father, especially about something as significant as a pregnancy. She got defensive, raising her voice over the phone, and said I was being dramatic and overreacting. She claimed that everyone lies in families sometimes and that I was making a bigger deal out of nothing. I tried to reason with her, explaining that lying about pregnancy isn't harmless. It could lead to misunderstandings, hurt feelings, and even long-term trust issues. She dismissed all of it and said, "I don't care. You either do this for me, or I'll just make excuses about why you can't come to the wedding." I was floored. I told her I didn't want to lie for her under any circumstances, and that I might reconsider attending the wedding if this was going to be a requirement. She said, "Fine, then maybe you shouldn't come. It'll be your choice." After that conversation, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal. I couldn't believe that she would ask me to participate in a lie like this, especially knowing that I've always valued honesty and integrity. I decided to take some time to think before responding. Over the next week, I weighed my options. I considered going to the wedding and pretending nothing was wrong, but the idea of being around people while carrying this lie in my mouth made me anxious and uncomfortable. I also realized that if I agreed to her request, it would set a precedent for future manipulations, and I didn't want to compromise my values. I finally told her my decision. I wrote her a long message explaining that I loved her and wanted her to have a wonderful wedding, but I could not attend if it required me to lie about something as personal as a pregnancy. I reiterated that I could not lie for anyone, no matter how much I cared about them. Her response was immediate and hostile. She accused me of being selfish, overreacting, and making the wedding about me. She said that I was choosing my morals over family, and that she would never forgive me for refusing. My parents got involved as well. They called me, pleading with me to reconsider, saying that Emily was already stressed and that I was being difficult. They kept emphasizing that it was just a little white lie and that it would make things easier for everyone. I tried to explain calmly that a pregnancy is not a trivial matter and that I couldn't lie about it under any circumstances. I also told them that their pressure was only making me more certain of my decision. My mom was silent for a long time, then said, "We just don't understand why you can't bend for your sister. It's just one little thing." I eventually stood my ground. I sent Emily a final message wishing her a beautiful wedding and hoping that she and Mark would have a happy life, but I would not be attending. She hasn't spoken to me since. My parents are upset with me. My friends are divided. Some think I did the right thing by standing by my principles. Others think I should have just gone along to avoid family drama. I feel torn. On one hand, I am proud of myself for not compromising my integrity. On the other hand, I am sad about the potential permanent rift with my sister and the fact that I will miss a significant family event. I also wonder if I'm being too rigid or if family loyalty should sometimes outweigh personal discomfort. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she asked me to lie about her being pregnant? Additional context. Emily has always expected me to go along with family expectations, even if it made me uncomfortable. I've been honest with my family about major life events and expect the same from them. Mark is aware of my decision and hasn't contacted me directly. The wedding is in 2 weeks, and my absence is already a known fact to Emily and my parents. I'm ready to accept that this may permanently affect my relationship with Emily, but I want to make sure I didn't overstep or overreact. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after he insulted my cooking. I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 28F. We grew up in a small town, and our family has a tradition of gathering every weekend at our parents' house. After our parents passed away a few years ago, Emily and I became really close, and we often relied on each other for emotional support. I've always prided myself on being a decent cook, and I enjoy hosting small gatherings at my place. I live in a modest 3-bedroom apartment, and I keep it tidy and welcoming. Emily recently got engaged to a man named Ryan, 30M. From the start, I didn't feel much of a connection with him, but I tried to be polite. He seemed charming in small doses, but had a tendency to make sarcastic comments that sometimes bordered on rude. For instance, when we met at a casual brunch, he remarked on how quaint my apartment was, and later at dinner, he asked, half joking, "Do you even know how to cook?" I brushed it off, thinking he was just nervous. About a month ago, Emily mentioned that she and Ryan were going to be in town for a long weekend and asked if they could stay at my apartment since their hotel reservation fell through. I hesitated. My apartment is not huge, and I value my privacy. But Emily said it would only be a couple of nights, and she insisted that Ryan had promised he would be on his best behavior. I finally agreed, thinking it would be easier than forcing them to find another place. The first evening was fine. We ordered takeout, and everyone kept conversation light. The next morning, I made pancakes and bacon for breakfast. Ryan immediately started making comments about the pancakes, saying they looked like something from a diner, and that the bacon was a little too crispy for his taste. I tried to shrug it off, thinking maybe he was just picky. Then things escalated at lunch. I prepared a simple pasta dish, one that I had spent a few hours perfecting. When I presented it, Ryan made a face and said, "Are you sure this is supposed to taste like this? Did you follow a recipe or just throw things together?" I felt my face flush with embarrassment. Emily gave him a sharp look, but Ryan laughed it off and said it was a joke. I tried to continue serving the meal, but the atmosphere was tense. He continued to criticize everything I served, from the salad dressing to the way I brewed the coffee. By dinner, I was exhausted and frustrated. After dinner, I pulled Emily aside and quietly told her that I didn't think Ryan's behavior was acceptable. I reminded her that I had invited them into my home, and it felt disrespectful to have my efforts mocked. Emily tried to defend him, saying he was just teasing and that I was taking things too seriously. I told her I wasn't comfortable having him stay any longer. Emily became defensive, saying that I was overreacting and that I needed to learn to deal with people if I wanted a relationship with Ryan. The next morning, I told Ryan politely but firmly that I didn't feel comfortable having him stay in my apartment anymore, and that he and Emily would need to check into a hotel for the remainder of the weekend. He looked shocked and said I was being dramatic and too sensitive. Emily tried to mediate, saying we could all move past this, but I stood my ground. I reminded her that hospitality doesn't mean tolerating constant insults. Ryan and Emily left, clearly upset. Emily has been distant with me since then. She called a few days later, accusing me of ruining her relationship with Ryan and saying that I embarrassed her in front of him. I tried to explain that I felt disrespected in my own home, but she insists that I should have tolerated his behavior for the sake of their relationship. She also said that maybe I was being controlling and that my apartment shouldn't dictate how guests behave. I feel like I did the right thing by setting boundaries. I am happy to welcome Emily, and I would have welcomed Ryan if he had shown basic respect, but his behavior was hurtful and relentless. I don't want to be around someone who dismisses and mocks my efforts, especially in my own home. My friends are divided. Some say I was right to protect my space, while others think I overreacted and that I should have just let it slide. Since the incident, Emily has been making subtle comments about how I can't get along with anyone and how she hopes I'll be nicer next time. Ryan has not contacted me, but I get the sense that Emily is starting to feel torn between us. I want to maintain a close relationship with my sister, but I also don't want to compromise my boundaries or self-respect. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my apartment after he insulted my cooking. I feel like it's reasonable to expect basic respect when someone is a guest in your home, but Emily insists I'm overreacting and being selfish. I've considered apologizing to smooth things over, but I don't want to imply that I tolerated abuse, even if it was in the form of jokes. I'm curious how others would view this. Did I handle this appropriately? Or should I have just swallowed my pride and let them stay? I feel like there's a fine line between being accommodating and allowing someone to belittle you. I've already offered to meet Emily for lunch or hang out outside my home, but she seems reluctant, implying that I need to get over it first. I want to repair our relationship without compromising my dignity. Has anyone else been in a situation where a guest's behavior crossed a line? And how did you handle it without causing a permanent rift? I'm struggling to figure out whether I'm being justified in setting boundaries or if I should have found a way to tolerate Ryan for the sake of my sister. I genuinely want to support Emily's happiness, but I also have to prioritize my own mental and emotional well-being. I'm stuck between feeling like I was right and feeling guilty for potentially harming my relationship with my sister. The tension in our texts and calls is palpable, and I don't want this to create a long-term divide. I just don't know if insisting on respect in my own home was unreasonable. I keep replaying the weekend in my head and wondering if I overreacted or if I was completely justified in asking them to leave. The whole situation has made me reflect on the dynamics between siblings and partners and how much influence a significant other should have over family relationships. I love my sister dearly, and I want to continue being a supportive presence in her life. But I'm also realizing that I can't compromise my self-respect or let someone belittle me in my own home. I guess the real question is whether my stance was reasonable or if I should have swallowed my discomfort to maintain peace. I'm trying to navigate the delicate balance between family loyalty and personal boundaries, but I'm unsure if I struck the right balance in this case. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.